Hi, I'm Anna Marie Cox, and people don't sink when you toss them into lava.
It's very annoying that way. Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner, and don't swim with dolphins during a labor dispute.
Welcome to Space the Nation, where we look at science fiction through the lens of
Enshittification
and liquidity preference theory. Today we'll be talking about John Scalzi's starter villain, which is available at book places like libraries.
They're pronounced libraries.
Libraries.
Yes.
And bookstores.
Yes.
Also, you can buy them at Amazon.
Right. That's what the normal people will know. But I just wanted to point out that there are other locations where you can, in fact, procure copies of books.
In the next few weeks, we will be launching the AIDs of March, which is going to be our look at female identified AI. I guess that's the way you'd put it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Celebrating both the Ides of March and International Women's Month.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to start that with Ex Machina. And then we're actually going to immediately go off schedule.
Yep.
Immediately.
Look, this is how we roll, Anna. This is how Space the Nation rolls.
Immediately swerve out of the Ides of March for a very special episode that I am referring to as our Tiny Desk Concert live show.
Well done. Yes.
Thank you. We're going to be recording a live show at South by Southwest, or rather, adjacent to South by Southwest.
Off
Dan's
South
going to be
Southwest.
at South by Southwest.
I am, in fact, going to be presenting or I'm going to be on a panel at South by Southwest. Presenting. I don't know. Sorry.
You will be presenting ideas.
Yes.
As part of a panel.
Yes.
I'll
be on a panel.
Tell them your panel.
Thank you, Anna. I will be on a panel on March 9th from 2:30 to 3:30 local Austin time. The panel is entitled What's Next? Preparing for the Next Global Health Crisis in the Onyx Ballroom. So if you've got a South by Southwest badge, feel free. Apparently, this diverse panel will address the intersection of technology and policy, community engagement, supply chains, and public-private partnerships to ensure resilience and well-being no matter what comes next.
And zombies.
Yeah.
And zombies.
Which is why I am on the panel, obviously, yes.
So we're going to take advantage of Dan being in town and going to do a very small live show, meaning my goal is 6 people. It looks like we might actually already be at 6, but we probably can. There's probably room.
There's more people. If more people want to come, that's perfectly fine.
There's probably room for 20 or 30.
Okay.
We're doing it in an outdoor space, place called Cosmic Coffee. The cool thing is it's just off South Congress, SoCo, as the kids call it.
Ooh, okay.
It is a little further south than like the really cool part of South Congress, but it is south of Congress. The exact address is 121 Pickle Road, which is kind of nice. And Cosmic is a wonderful local place. It has a huge outdoor area, which is where we're planning on doing this. They have various food trucks, barbecue, tacos. I can't remember any of the others because the only thing I've ever gotten there is barbecue and tacos. And it will be at 7 p.m. And we will be discussing Dune Part 2.
Dune Part 2, which I believe just come out, so we're going to have to make sure we actually see it. That'll be important. But yes, looking forward to chatting about it.
I also want to add that you can bring your dog. Not your dog, personally, Dan. Although if you brought her, that would be cool. And I can't bring my dog because he's a little crazy man. But if you live in Austin and you have your dog, you could bring your dog to our show because it's at an outdoor venue.
Let's be very clear. I think it would be safe to say Anna and I want to meet the dogs. So, yeah, we would.
Yeah. You get free admission with a dog. You also get free admission without a dog. But,
but you will get a friendlier free admission with a dog.
I'm going to say just once again, that's 7 p.m. the same day as Dan's panel, which is the 9th Saturday at Cosmic Coffee.
121 Pickle Road. Also, if you are listening to this and a patron, it means that you will be able to also participate in our AUA. We're doing an AUA this coming Sunday, which is February 24th at 10:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. Just come armed with questions. Ask whatever you want.
And the link to that will be on our patron page, and it is in our Discord, which I want to talk about in a second. But we really have a lot of stuff for patrons right now.
We do.
So it's, I think, becoming self-evident that why people should become a patron for as little as $3 a month. There is the Discord, which is awesome on its own. The Discord also decided what our 250th patron celebration episode is going to be about.
And they pulled it off, Anna.
Is...
Some things in here don't react well to bullets, Anna. It is The Hunt for Red October, starring Alec Baldwin and Sean Connery, which is just an awesome movie, and I'm really happy about it. Going to enjoy doing
Apparently,
this.
Saltburn was like in the top 10, but thank God. There was a campaign, a lovely Carrie, who we love, had something of a bit of a ironic campaign to make us talk about Saltburn.
Which, to be fair to Carrie, I think Carrie even pointed out that if it seemed like Saltburn would actually win, she was going to switch sides to make sure Saltburn did not win. And thank you to Carrie, because that makes it much more amusing for us. But we are actually going to be doing a special patrons-only episode about The Hunt for Red October. I'm pretty pumped about this. I'm always pumped to see Hunt for Red October, so that'll be good.
And also another special episode that will be dropping, actually probably before this episode. Yeah. So it is a enticement. If you are not already a patron, we will record just shortly here discussion of the last season of True Detective. And man, I really liked it. We'll have stuff to discuss.
Yeah, we're going to have stuff to discuss.
But I do think there's some really cool things about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of our coda to cold sci-fi winter. Mm-hmm. You know, we've been through a bunch of positive reasons why people might want to become patrons, Dan, like what it adds to their life. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about something that it'll do the service of eliminating it from their life?
Yes, Anna. You know, if you're not a patron, you've been listening to this episode, you either had to skip or listen to various commercials. And guess what? If you're a patron, you don't have to do that. And also, if at any point in the future, I manage to create a Davos, but one that does not pretend that they're helping people, I will invite all the patrons, you know, and so that we can all participate. That's all I'm saying.
Dan, do you know, does Davos like cover participation if you're invited? Like, do they pay for you to come?
No, my understanding is they do not.
It's like South by.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
And also, I'm sure like they ratchet up the hotel, much like South by. I'm sure the hotel, you know, costs at Davos are through the roof.
I wish I could offer you a place to stay, Dan, but it would be you or Exley. So.
Oh no, I get the choice. Yes, I understand.
Yeah. So Dan, you're going to South by. How the heck are you otherwise?
Otherwise, I am good, Anna. I just came back from Florida, first of all, so I've escaped Florida. But that said, it was lovely to be there for a couple days. It was nice to get some warm weather. Nice to visit my parents, actually. So, you know, we had a lovely little vacation. And, you know, now I am back in Massachusetts and feeling good about that. How are you?
I'm okay, Dan. I'm doing pretty good, I would say. I'm trying to work on being more like upbeat with saying how I'm doing.
Would it be safe to say you're doing better than the protagonist of our book was doing at the start?
Yes, although it gave me, should have come with a trigger warning.
Yes, I was like, you know, we'll talk about this, but like, holy Christ, the first like 30 pages of this book, I was like, oh my God.
Specific trigger warning for Anna Marie Cox. Yes. And I'm disappointed John didn't think of that for me.
Yes.
Anna, be careful reading this book because it's about a divorced journalist who's suffering in the terrible journalism
depression
implosion
of, you know, the last decade
that we're having, and they move back home.
Yep.
And yeah, that was hard. Oh, and of course has cats. I mean, to be totally, the fact that he didn't have a dog, I was able to be like, all right, not me.
Right.
It's not me.
Which does lead to the question of why are we doing this in the first place, Anna? And I think you've sort of said the most obvious reason.
Which is that there are cats?
Talking cats, Anna.
Talking cats. We didn't say talking cats, did we?
Okay.
Talking cats. There's talking cats. Yeah. They're not just cats, but talking cats. Well, typing cats.
Talking, I guess, actually, it's only typing cats. You're right. But you know what? I figured you would like that because, to be fair, the cats had a valid reason to type. It wasn't just typing for typing's sake.
That is correct. It wasn't dramatic typing. Mm-hmm. And as in our interview with John, which will also be dropping in our patron feed, we didn't cover that and all the reasons to become a patron. We're just going nuts with the special patron stuff.
We are.
Lately.
We're bad at promoting the patrons, though.
He pointed out that he wanted to have them be typing because it bothered him on the, hard sci-fi level. That a cat's vocal cords, the equipment with which they vocalize would not be able to produce human speech. Right. So,
yes.
And I'll say now, as we talked about in the interview, That is loosely based on Mary Robinette Kowal's cat, Elsie, who uses one of those things that someone may have seen on social media. It's called a Fluent Pet keyboard.
Right. It's like a touchpad where they can like say basics, basic words or messages.
We're doing this book in part because we've always intended to do a Scalzi book.
Right. Scalzi is I believe what they refer to as a BFD in the sci-fi world. Also, I'm just going to again point to the cover. I mean, the book has a cover with a cat in a business suit. It is a genius cover. And Scalzi in our, not to give too much away, but Scalzi has acknowledged the cover probably is responsible for at least 15% of the book sales.
And I talked to him, I think before maybe while you were settling, you were getting yours non-squeaky chair.
There we go.
About how my personal genius idea for a viral promotion would be to offer like a filter on Instagram or TikTok where people can do their cat in that business suit.
I think that is a genius idea. Yes.
And I think they're going to do something like that. And I don't know if that's how filters work or not, Dan, but I just thought I'd frame it that way so I sound like I know how filters work.
The Gen Z people, I'm sure, are loving that idea.
But there's another reason why we're doing this book, Dan.
Yes, which is?
Our previous book.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes. Listeners, this is 2 books in a row. We don't always do 2 books in a row, like not because we don't like reading books, but because we have other jobs, and reading the book usually takes a slightly longer time than watching a movie or a TV show. But it would be safe to say that after reading Leech by Hiram Ennis, we needed this. Leech was an incredibly gothic, intense read. And I don't think Scalzi would be upset when I say that Starter Villain is the opposite of that. In point of fact, this is honestly a fantastic vacation read. And I know that because I read it while going on vacation. And it really was the sort of perfect thing to put me in the mood for going to Florida.
Yeah, it's a quick read.
Yes.
It is, except for if you're in a very specific personal place in your life, not very triggering in any way.
Right.
And it just zips along. It is a romp.
Yeah.
Dan.
No, it's a romp. It's a delightful romp. I honestly think I might have laughed out loud more reading this book than I have in any novel in like the last 5 or 10 years easily. So, again,
wow.
Props to Scalzi.
High praise.
Yes.
High praise. I'm not a laugh out loud person. I take that back. I think there were a couple of LOL moments in this book, but now I can't remember what they were. Because it's full of like good moments.
Yes. Most of them provided by Hera. I think the laugh out loud lines for me were the lines that Hera was typing, which was great. Also the dolphins.
Charlie has some good lines.
Charlie has some good lines as well.
All right. Let's talk about, we need to talk about the plot and stuff, but before we get to that, will this podcast ruin the book for people if they listen to the podcast first?
So the novel is called Starter Villain and has the sentient cat on the cover. I think those are kind of the big spoilers, but I would strongly recommend reading it before Ryan Reynolds stars in it, because one of the things we found out is that his production company apparently has picked up the option to produce this film, which doesn't mean the movie will actually get made, but I could see why Ryan Reynolds would have liked this film and might actually he
thinks it would make a good movie.
Yeah.
There is a rather large twist.
Yes.
At the very end.
Right, which I don't even know if we're going to discuss all that much, but there is important plot twist, and we will provide the spoiler alert for that.
And I don't want to get too far into this, but Dan, do you think Ryan Reynolds would make a good Charlie?
No, he would be a horrible Charlie. I want to be very clear. I actually hope Ryan Reynolds appears in this. He should not be Charlie. He should be Dobrev. I actually think he could kill that role.
I don't think he's quite old enough, but I think he could be one of the fail sons.
Oh, that might be good too. Yeah, they could have like a cameo or something like that. Or it could be he could be the funeral director. Actually, that would be kind of funny.
Also thought. I mean, I want female representation, but I also thought he would be good if they gender swap the kind of henchwoman.
Oh, see, I thought Blake Lively would be good as the henchwoman.
Oh, she would be great.
Blake Lively would actually be great as Till.
So he could be Tobias. Ryan could be Tobias.
Oh, he would be great as Tobias. That would actually work. Yes. He should not be Charlie under any circumstances. No.
Charlie needs to be a little more dopey.
Yeah.
Like a little more of a an unassuming kind of every guy.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's hard to, like, also he's supposed to be younger. I mean, no offense to Ryan Reynolds, but I think the protagonist is like 32 or something. So
Yeah.
Ryan
No,
looks
I think
great, but he's a touch older than that.
probably wouldn't be offended if we
Yeah.
pointed out he's not 32.
Yeah.
But yeah, it needs to be somebody younger than him.
I think
I'm not even gonna. My brain is not on fire with ideas at the moment.
Okay.
I'm sure someone could name somebody.
It would be some
You
interesting
know
casting.
who it would be great type, but is pre-bulked out John Krasinski.
John Krasinski. I was actually thinking like
the Jim version,
right.
the Office version.
Also too old, but Johnny Galecki from The Big Bang Theory. That would also, I think, that kind of vibe would actually
someone
work.
not in shape,
Yeah.
like Jim, like before Krasinski was like all Jack Ryan,
right? When Krasinski was doughy, and yes, like me.
Yes.
Okay, let's get to the story behind the story. Anna, do we need this, or should we just tell people to become a patron and listen to our special patrons only episode in which Scalzi provides the backstory?
Yeah, I think just a couple of cool things. Mm-hmm. One of which I already mentioned, which is that he got this idea from his fellow science fiction author, Mary Robinette. Mm-hmm. And her Instagram feed has all of this Elsie stuff on it. And I will leave it to listeners to decide if they believe that Elsie in particular is talking. Mm-hmm. There's obviously like a Clever Hans effect happening. I mean, I don't think that can be avoided, but she clearly is communicating something. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way.
And that's the important part,
But like, I don't know about Mimi, but Exley has a bell for outside.
Oh, Mimi can communicate when she needs food or water. She's very good on that. When she wants to go out in the backyard, she can communicate that. Also, she does something that we like to call FaceTiming, which is when she wants to go for a walk, she will sit right in front of us and like best posture and like look at us. So yeah, that's what
that's really funny.
We call it FaceTime.
So Exley, I think the number one thing I say to Exley mm-hmm. during the day or over the course of our lives together is, "What do you want?"
Oh no.
Because like the bell, I trained him for outdoors, but he now just uses it for like any times he needs attention.
Is he like a wealthy dowager who just rings the bell at any moment? Like
and I it occurs to me I should get him maybe other ways of communicating. That he also does this thing like he does his stompy pause when he wants some. Like he'll it almost like he has like it's like he has to go to the bathroom, although it's not always that he has to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like he'll like shift from paw to paw.
Right.
And I actually want to talk more about our pets, and actually I want to talk more about my cats in relation to this story. But I also think
we should get to the plot.
We should get to the thing.
Right. So first, just very quickly, we need to do Chekhov's What's It. This is the thing that often appears in the first act of a book that winds up being somewhat relevant in the third act. Anna, what do you have?
Chekhov's dolphin greeting.
Those dolphins were good. I have Chekhov's local dive bar, which is,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It works, I know.
It works.
Yeah.
Dan, do you want to do our jacket blurb?
Yes, which I do for the books because, otherwise it would take me forever. But although this book would not have broken me if I had to describe the plot in more minute detail.
Leech would have broken
me in a big way. Okay. Charlie Fitzer is just your run-of-the-mill Chicago-based journalist, by which I mean he's been laid off from the Tribune and is now working as a substitute teacher. He's trying desperately to hold on to his family house, but his siblings want to sell the place. All Charlie really has is his cat Hera and a desire to buy and run the local pub. When his estranged billionaire uncle, Jake Baldwin, passes away, it looks like Charlie might be in for some money. But it's way more complicated than that. Asked to stand for his uncle at his funeral by his aide, Matilda Morrison, Charlie learns that his uncle wasn't just a parking garage magnate. He was also in the villain business, a world that is not quite what the movies depict. It turns out that real-world villains are mostly douche bros who inherit their fortune and try to feast on lucrative government contracts. Though to be sure, there are some more exotic elements like volcano layers, talking cats, demented Davos knockoffs, fake deaths, pissed-off dolphin labor organizers, and a henchman named Tobias the Stabber.
Now, to be fair, his name is not Tobias the Stabber.
No, it's true.
Tobias. And Matilda often corrects Charlie.
Yes,
That is
but I
not
did
his
like
name.
Tobias the Stabber. That was just very
Yes.
funny. Yes. As Charlie navigates through this very strange world, he's forced to choose just what kind of villain and what kind of cat employer he wants to be. Anna, does that about sum it up?
Yes. It is not a complicated plot.
Right.
The joy of this book is in the details.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil too many of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I can just okay the plot.
There is what I omitted, and
it.
should I provide a spoiler alert here? Because if you haven't read the book, there is a massive plot twist at the end.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
let's go ahead and do it. We said we probably wouldn't talk about it much, but
but I will say, like, there is a big plot twist at the end, which, for lack of a way of putting it, it turns out that who you thought was the villain isn't exactly the villain, and I'm not entirely sure I got the entire plot twist, to tell you the truth. It seemed very complicated. A fact that I think even Scalzi sort of gilded the lily by having, one of the characters acknowledge, there were a lot of, moving parts on this.
A lot of moving elements.
Yes,
a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, I feel like they could have done without it.
Yes, that's the way I sort of thought. That was my reaction.
Like, I guess maybe we should have let Scalzi know how we would edit his book.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But what I'll say, to frame it more positively, is that it's a really enjoyable read, and that last twist kind of just adds some element. It adds some stuff that you didn't know, and it didn't need to. It could have just been, because the end of the book is Charlie goes back to his old life, and you can get to that in any number
in a
of
more
ways.
elegant way. Yes, that's probably true.
Yeah.
And actually, that part I liked a great deal. So that was nice. But so
that's the big spoiler: is Charlie goes back to his old life. I mean, better.
Yes,
his old life.
His old life much better. No longer has to worry about journalism. That will be fine. Speaking of which, Anna, were you okay after reading the first? I will ask you again, because I asked you when we interviewed Scalzi. That I was thinking about you hard.
It was
the first
rough.
couple pages.
Like, it was pretty rough. Like, journalism has been separate podcast about the end of journalism, but. I think there's a story in Wired recently that talked about whether this past season especially has been an extinction level event for journalism. If people don't already know, there have been massive layoffs at a bunch of different publications, and the podcast industry has imploded. And I mean, we love doing this. Thank God we don't do it for money.
Yeah.
Although it's also true that one of the few models that's really working for podcast hosts, podcast people, podcast producers is the small but well-supported and passionate audience.
Interesting. Podcastians.
So another appeal for you to support us, because this is one of the ways that actually it is an income stream, and it is helpful for me to have some of it. And, we do have our own plans for growing the business, and we are taking those steps. But that's one thing that's had an impact on my life. And then the other thing is, and we joke about newsletters a little bit, but I do think newsletters are the new pivot to video.
Yeah.
And that they're unsustainable and their numbers are artificially inflated. And it's going to be even uglier when the bottom drops out for people unlike you, Dan, who has a nice side, hustle.
Right. My Substack is a side hustle. It is not the main thing that I do. And I am very glad for that, because otherwise it would be tough. There
are people who have it as their main hustle, and a lot of them are friends of mine, and I hope that they succeed, but there is only so much room for people doing that kind of business.
Yeah. And
I just don't see how it's not going to save journalism. And I think it's kind of cannibalizing journalism. So on to the fun book.
Yes. No, let me put it this way. So we now we get to the point where, how is this science fiction different from all other science fictions? One way is that, in fact, the depiction of journalism in the first 30 pages, which sort of, understandably falls by the wayside, is very painfully and accurately rendered.
Oh, and also he talks about cable news in a way, like he depicts cable news accurately.
Yes.
Poor Andrew Ross Sorkin. It's a little bit of a sideswipe.
Right. But I would say it was a gentle sideswipe. I don't think he was going after Sorkin per se. I think Sorkin came
he was
off
going
fine.
after the experts that appear on CNBC.
Yeah.
So even his topic area, like, Scalzi was a journalist. We should say that. And so he knows of what he speaks. And it is a really good. It is an accurate depiction of a failing industry. And then goes by the wayside, thank God. And
and then we get to the talking cats and the union organizing dolphins, which
of course,
yes,
that made me. So he set me up again, John. Like, of course I'm going to love this book because you make me miserable, and then you give me talking cats and union organizing.
This book was a journey for Anna, listeners. I mean. But yes, like the talking cats and the union organizing dolphins in particular were delightful because they were all assholes. There's just no other way to put it. And they reveled in that fact. I mean, they owned it, which was fantastic.
I will have some points to make about that.
Okay.
And Dan, also there was a big chunk of the book that took place on Lake Como.
Yes.
In Italy?
It was in a town called Bellagio, Anna.
Did you enjoy that part?
I did enjoy that part, Anna, because, and it's time for our Antarctica moment, I have been to Bellagio, Anna. I was glad to hear this from John. I was a Rockefeller fellow.
Who hasn't gone?
What? Say this again?
Who hasn't been there?
Who hasn't been there? Which I found fascinating because, like, he got some good stuff there. But there is the Rockefeller Foundation has a villa at the top of Bellagio, which, frankly, if you wanted to have a villain lair, pretty good villain lair. There's actually things like secret doors and so forth. And so he knew about this and apparently wanted to put it in the novel, but it would have made it too complicated. And I think that's probably correct. But more importantly, Scalzi's world building of the world of villainy.
Oh, wait, did you say you've been there to the Rockefeller? You were a fellow there. Yeah. That's the Antarctic part. Okay.
Yeah, that was the Antarctic part.
In case you didn't mention it,
yes,
which seems odd to me, but maybe I'd spaced out. Like maybe
Anna spaces out anytime I can do an Antarctica moment. Yes, I did mention that I'd been there. Okay, but more importantly, like, Scalzi's world building is really quite good. And honestly, for me, the funniest part does take place in Bellagio, but it's not because it's in Bellagio. It's the sort of rendering of the fake version of Davos. And it is note perfect. There is one
fake version?
Yeah. But let's put it this way. There is a scene that takes place in the lobby where, and it's also like Matilda Morris at Till's best moment, where like she just can't stand these people. And it's just a delightful description of how people behave at these conferences.
Yeah.
And it was. Yeah.
And to be clear, so the fake Davos scene is the Lombardi Convocation,
yes,
which is a supervillain Davos.
Right.
If you don't already believe that Davos is attended by supervillains.
Yes. Although it's like I think it's called the Bellagio Gathering or something. Like there's a front version, which is the Davos part, and then the Lombardi Convocation is sort of the green room version of that, which, like Davos is yes, a green room. It's green rooms all the way down, basically.
Yeah. So characters, Dan.
Yeah.
You already, I think, mentioned that you loved.
Yeah,
Hera.
I have to say, for me, I don't know about you, Anna, the non-human characters were the ones that stood out to me. Hera, who is the cat secret agent who looks after Charlie, who really did provide the best laugh out loud lines. I think the first time I really laughed was when Charlie was trying to figure out, like, looks at Hera, like, have you been communicating with Till? And Till's like, yeah, we communicated. And Hera says, yeah, we email a lot, which I don't know why. It was just... It was delightful. I think Scalzi is very clever and uses the all caps to describe when Hera types anything, and that also I think actually works. Also, Dolphin 73, who curses like a Teamster, organizes like a Teamster, and insults Northwestern like a University of Chicago graduate.
Which, of course,
Scalzi is.
That is how we know each other. I have to say, like, it's fuzzy for me exactly how that is our connection. I think he knew he's like a tiny bit younger.
Before you, yes, we were talking a little bit before you came on. I think he said that, yes, that you had overlapped, but that you swam in different circles. Although he wasn't sure. He was the editor of the Maroon, but that might have been after you had graduated. Yeah.
After. I was an editor at the Maroon myself, right. But then also I left the Maroon.
Oh.
To go work for what was called the Gray City Journal, which was the left-wing student publication that was staffed by people who would become the Baffler.
Oh, okay. This is good. That's good. That was your Antarctica version of the story. Okay, nice.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Dan, who else did you like?
I did like Dobrev, who is this sort of chief villain in like the Lombardy Convocation. He had a nice like sort of cheerfulness to him that I found entertaining. Also, not a huge character, but the funeral director during the uncle's funeral had just like the driest dialogue throughout, and it was a nice it was a good running bit that basically Charlie is completely bewildered by what's going on at this funeral because essentially all the other villains think that his uncle faked his death because it wouldn't have been the first time that he did it. And so they keep needing to confirm that he's actually dead. And the funeral director is just completely unflappable in the face of this. And Charlie is impressed by that.
Right.
Yeah. What about you?
I liked a lot of this. Of course, I liked the talking cats.
Yeah.
I mean, there really is only one.
It's really only Hera. Yeah.
Really only Hera, although she has an intern.
Persephone. That's
true. I did want dialogue from the intern, but Scalzi told us in the interview that he cut a lot of the other talking cat parts just for narrative stability. I liked Matilda Morrison, a lot. And then also Williams, whose first name I'm blanking on, but he's kind of the chief.
He's like the chief tech guy there, right? Like on the
chief tech guy at the island. Yeah. And he is funny because he's actually, he's a labor sympathizer.
Yes.
Of course. But he's like super competent and helpful, and then also kind of has his own opinions that he only gives when he's asked, which is, that's what
staffers do. I mean,
that's what staffers do, but he definitely has them, and he's pretty smart and funny when he's asked to be. So I just appreciated that in a character, like not kind of performatively funny, but just there being wise, right? Like a side character who's not just like there to make the lead guys look good.
Exactly. Actually competent. I agree with you on Till, and in fact, like he'll never do it, but it would be interesting to read a prequel novel of how did Till get into this business, or what she winds up doing. Like, it in some ways she was a character who was entertaining, but also ascertaining her motives was a little difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree. And also, it does sound like she didn't expect to become a henchwoman,
right?
So
I didn't think of her as a henchwoman so much as like a chief of staff.
I like calling aren't chiefs of staff hench people?
I guess they are. Yes.
All right, Dan.
While the Dolphins have a sick out, please listen to these commercial messages and look for the union label.
Dan, there is no ethical consumption.
We'll be back right after this. Oh, the Dolphins have settled. That's outstanding. We can continue. We can now continue with our podcast. Welcome back.
All right. Well, Dan, I have a question for you.
Oh, please ask away, Anna.
Is there IR in this book?
Anna, I want to talk about soil. No, wait. Don't push that button. Don't push that button, Anna.
Okay.
There is a lot of IR in this book, Anna. Almost as much IR, frankly, as Talking Cats. And it was one of the delightful surprises, I think, for me upon reading the book. I wasn't expecting this. One thing is that Scalzi nails the sort of life cycle of empires, whether you might think of them as actual territorial empires or, in his case, corporate empires. There are a bunch of IR theorists, going back to Ibn Khaldun, but most recently Robert Gilpin, that basically make this life cycle theory that argues that, founders are often the ones who have had to struggle and therefore are pretty adept in terms of building stuff. The problem is that over the span of generations, newer generations don't have any experience with the sort of difficulty in the environment. They frankly get soft, and so as a result wind up sort of pampering themselves rather than acting in the sort of truly ruthless way that you presumably need to do. And so, that's kind of what you see in terms of the Lombardy Convocation. None of the main villains, with the possible exception of Dobrev, are terribly bright, and that's a thing. Also, Scalzi pretty much nails the relatively complex relationship between states and multinational corporations, which is to say that, if villains act too villainy, great powers will step in. And Till pointed that out, that like they couldn't like constantly shoot down satellites because then either the US or China would actually invade. But short of that, corporations have some leverage. They can sell mutually assured destruction at a subscription. Honestly, the only critique I had on the corporate side was that Scalzi needed more bankers. There weren't enough bankers. There weren't enough, finance douche bros. Also, the idea that none of these masters of the universe are terribly bright is great. And I think...
And accurate.
And accurate, yeah. Which, by the way, is also why I think Charlie winds up being lucky that he is alive. And this is also why the final plot twist, which we talked about a little bit, doesn't entirely make sense, because it rested heavily on the notion that all of these other villains would behave at least in a simply rational way, when in fact that was far from assured given their behaviors. So that was the one thing,
It also predicted a lot of Charlie's, basically, like all the moving parts part of it.
Yeah.
It was a con in some ways, right? But it required everyone to act in a very specific way.
Right.
But it's funny because unlike, I think, the best con movies, best heist movies, which rely on people's, bad motivation, like you can rely on people having bad motivations, right? Of people's greed.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie is actually relied upon to be decent.
Mm-hmm. And
that seems, that's great, but like, it's sort of funny that almost feels like a weak part of the plan.
Right. Yes. The other thing is, this is a minor thing, but like one of the things we hear about the start of the Lombardy Convocation is that it started because, the defense industrialists at the time, I'm sorry. I always love it when I do this and you yawn, Anna.
No.
I'm like, okay, fine. You asked me about the IR. I don't know if you really want to know the answer, though. All right, fine.
Here, just a view into my worldview.
Yes.
Or my way I think about things. I think I never got it drilled into me that yawning was rude, or that yawning like necessarily meant that you were bored.
Okay, wow.
Like, I don't think about yawn. Like, I now know I've been acculturated into the idea that you're not supposed to do that.
Yes.
And that but like, I think as a kid or something, like no one told me don't yawn.
Interesting.
And so like, I still have trouble like keeping it in, because sometimes I just tired.
No, I get it. My daughter has the same problem. Lauren, if you're listening.
No, really? Because do you believe she's bored of you? Or do you think she just has trouble keeping her yawns to herself?
No, she has problems keeping her yawns to herself, and she doesn't quite realize, because for a variety of reasons.
It also can be a spectrum-y thing.
Yes. That's what I was trying to. Yeah, that's partially it. Anyway, I just want to close there.
And speak for myself, my dad. Just
to close the story, the quasi bullshit story about the start of the Lombardy Convocation. I did like how Matilda just was so irritated about the Boer War story, but the claim was that in the Boer War, defense industrialists thought it would be a long war, and it turned out it wasn't. And so, again, the theory of all these villains is that they're trying to sort of, not create complete chaos, but create enough mayhem so that they can profit from it. The truth is that very often defense industrialists, like most policymakers, often expect short wars. That's actually the bias runs in the opposite direction in IR. Generally speaking,
short and frequent wars, like cabbies. Right. Cabbies want short, frequent rides rather than.
Well, the better way of putting it is that most policymakers, and for that matter, most industrialists, for risk-averse reasons, they're not going to anticipate a long war, because for precisely the reason that if you bet on a long war and you're wrong, if you're a defense industrialist, you will go out of business. If you're a policymaker, you never go into a war thinking it's going to be a long war, because that's generally speaking not a great policy.
Except if it's a war for oil, Dan.
Wars for oil don't actually last that long.
Or if it's okay.
They don't.
I almost want to ask you. I just want to ask you, like, did they really start the global war on terror thinking like, oh, we're going to win this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They thought it was going to be a quick war. And to be fair to them, the reason they thought it was going to be a quick war was that if you recall, the U.S. wars of the 1990s, think Bosnia, think Kosovo, think even Panama, were short wars. And so, they thought it was going to be quick.
Okay. Story for another time.
Yeah.
You had also supported, I recall, some things back then.
Yeah, no.
You have come to regret.
I supported the 2003 invasion of Iraq. I didn't think it was going to be a short war, but they did. There's no denying that most of the policymakers did. I would also add, by the way, that Russia thought the war in Ukraine was also going to be a short war because the previous wars they had fought had been relatively short in the past decade. So it's just
funny that folks like me look at this and are like, obviously they think it's going to be a long war because this is like the business model.
Yeah. Nope. No, and for the business
also, types, obviously it's going to be a long war because okay, I'm going to not get overly, we're not going to talk about this because we need to talk about the fun stuff.
Yes. And also this leads, well, yes, let's get to the fun stuff, Anna, which means I have a question for you.
Yes, Dan.
Is there a critique of capitalism in this book?
Dan?
Yes.
You're not trapped if you don't want to leave. That's capitalism in a nutshell.
There we go.
Late capitalism, at least. So the labor plot line, there is a labor plot line here in the organizing dolphins. And I want to just say that this particular sort of vignette or this subplot is a really good example of how belligerence is a great organizing technique. Like, just to be very unpleasant is going to gum up the works as efficiently as a sick out, right? Or as an actual strike. If you just make the social friction, sticky enough, you are going to create a slowdown and you're going to make life unpleasant for management. And it's a great technique for labor and not a great technique for management, right? Like if management responds in kind to belligerence, it just gets worse. Yeah. And so in some ways, like Charlie actually is the one who figures this out, right? He cuts the Gordian knot of this belligerent standoff and just asks them what they want.
Right.
And that leads to a fairly equitable solution. I think it's a good model. I think it's a positive portrayal of management labor relations.
I would add that it's interesting because Scalzi, the dialogue and the interactions between the characters in most of this book is between people who don't trust each other and potentially want to kill each other, is all sort of pretty humorous and polite, and there's certain norms and customs. And the exception is, in fact, the labor dispute, where the dolphins are just cursing constantly and insulting the humans like you wouldn't believe, because they've, to be fair, also been insulted in a variety of ways. So it is an interesting contrast that way.
Well, they're forced to live like slaves. Yeah. I mean, this is they actually get a little bit into this towards the end about how this is just a fundamentally actually pretty gross, you can't call it a human rights violation because they're not human, but it is the violation of intelligence beings' rights.
Well, it's fascinating because Scalzi doesn't, this is sort of touched on slightly because Hera acknowledges this as well, that basically the genetically modified dolphins and cats are really in some ways socially isolated, because both of them say we can't really talk to our species. They don't know what to do with us. And so we have to interact with the humans, and the humans treat us like shit. At least the dolphins.
And they don't have reproductive freedom, which he touches on, doesn't go into a ton, but it was kind of nice to see that acknowledged that this is actually, if you think about it, it's gross.
Right.
And Charlie actually does think about it more than anyone else has.
Yes.
More than anyone besides the cats and the dolphins themselves, and liberates them, for lack of a better word. He's not going to go back to this, but I would read an entire novel from Hera's perspective. Yeah,
that would also be good. Also, I did like that the dolphins didn't like the cats. And frankly, I think the cats felt similarly. So, it was...
That's true.
Yeah, it was good that way.
So there's also a somewhat more subtle critique of capitalism, or at least, the law of primogeniture, in the Fail Son contingent of the Lombardy convocation. And he doesn't actually come out and say this, but their ineptitude and enormous debt is a good reminder that poor people and rich people experience debt differently.
Yes.
When a poor person owes a ton of money, that's a failure. When a rich person owes a ton of money, well, that's success. So it's good that is pointed out. Charlie is actually not allowed to borrow the money he needs to buy the bar, whereas all these inept fail sons just owe billions
potentially,
billions of dollars. Yeah. I also appreciated sort of a quick jab at capitalism. There is a pitch and pitch, which is based, I guess, on a video game. Neither of us are gamers, so can't speak to it. And that is the joke that Dan alluded to when he asked me not to hit the button when he said he wanted to talk about soil.
Yes.
It is people come out and do like, I forget what they call
the
these
elevator
sometimes.
pitch. Basically, it's a 2-minute.
Elevator pitch. But there's like a word for this when like it's like a VC slam.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. They're called something.
Yeah.
But so these people, entrepreneurs with ideas, come out and pitch, and then the Lombardi Convocation can like literally hit eject and send them into the lake. And there is at one point a pitch that involves what Charlie calls a Hunger Games version of college applications.
Oh, I shuddered at that. That was like, look this way, your reaction to the discussion of life, like the state of journalism, that paragraph, I was like, oh God, that was just very disturbing.
Now, the briefest version of that is that colleges bid on applicants. Right? Like
I think so.
That's it, right?
They kept constantly talking about like real-time adjustments.
Yeah, it's like real-time bidding war on an applicant. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's terrible. Now, what I thought about today, that even the pitch and pitch is kind of example of that, is that these days we have like a meta version of exploitative entertainment where we consume someone else being exploited. It's an even more horrific version of the Hunger Games for college applications, which is you would charge people to watch the bidding.
Yes.
And that is where I have my reference to that Mr. Beast thing I sent you today. If you don't know who Mr. Beast is, God bless you, and turn off the podcast right now.
I actually don't know who Mr. Beast is, so I'm kind of delighted about this.
All right. So Dan, he does this shit all the time.
Okay.
Like he does this stuff where he like pays people to do humiliating things. And it's like, he's incredibly popular, millions and millions of millions. He's one of YouTube's most popular content creators.
Oh.
And the thing I sent Dan was he did this. It is like actually upsetting to like describe. Mm-hmm. He got 100 people from age 1 to 100. I would like to speak to the parents of the people for the 1 to 18.
Yeah.
And put them in clear boxes and ask them to do tasks. And the winner gets $500,000. It is a level of abasement that is hard for me to even get my head around. Like you compared it to Squid Games, and it's Squid Games, but like yay!
It's like Squid Game, but everyone gets to watch. Like the thing about Squid Game was that no one was watching it,
and that's the meta version that's so disturbing to me. Is that like it's not the game itself is bad. It's the people. It's Mr. Beast making money off of people wanting to watch.
It is, for lack of a better putting it, the gamification of the game.
Yeah. So something I was a little surprised by is that I expected to find Jeff Bezos and the Lombardi Convocation. Like I expected to find some like Elon or Bezos character, and they're not there. There are some other specific references that I will let people listen to the interview to find out about.
Yes, and I have to say I was surprised by that, and we're not going to tell you in this podcast, but it would be safe to say John revealed
an Easter egg that has apparently been in no other interview.
Yes, so we have in our patrons only interview, there is a reveal about this book that I don't think anyone else has figured out, so that's pretty good.
Dolphins talking.
It's time for Discord notes. This is where we take questions from our patrons on the Discord channel, answer them in the podcast. In this case, just a quick one from Miranda SM, and on point. Which pet of yours should be least trusted to run a corporate empire? Anna, it's the dogs. I mean, this is the one thing Scalzi through Hera gets absolutely correct. Like, I love my dog. My dog should in no way be in charge of any kind of corporate empire. So
there's two different issues here, though. Yeah. There's trusted versus being good at it. And
okay, I would trust my dog, but I would trust my dog also to do it badly. Like, I don't think my dog would screw me over, but the dog would screw the corporation over.
Whereas Molly is the opposite problem, right? I think Molly would be quite a good, C-suite executive.
Oh, Molly would be terrifyingly good. You would be out of the house. I mean, just to be clear. Yeah.
She would run this as an Airbnb. Like, she would start buying investment properties, and I would be out on the street, I think Bram not good.
Yeah.
A little too sweet and loving. Not even he would be kind of a funny lieutenant for her because he'd be like, "Well, why are we doing this, boss? Boss, this seems like not a good idea. Like, I think people are going to get hurt by this, boss."
I like the idea of Bram as the Jimmy Olsen of the
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. He'd just not be. He would. I don't know why. I mean, we already have plenty of money, so. And then Exley, I mean, Exley is a little too delicate.
Yeah, can I be blunt? I think Exley would go Howard Hughes on the corporate empire.
If Exley had the money
Yeah.
to like just not do anything, he would not do
That's
anything.
what I'm trying to say. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. And you know what? His fingernails are getting very long. His butts.
Oh, wait, what's that? Oh, splash! It's the pitch and pitch. Yes.
Pitch and pitch, that's right.
It's the debris field. These are the things where we that had not talked about before, but like it tickled us somewhat. I don't
tickled us somewhat.
Yes. I don't have a ton here, Anna. One thing that I will say, which I did genuinely laugh at, was Hera has the best lines as far as I'm concerned. Like I like the line, we communicate a lot by email. I also love the line of like there's a conversation where Charlie feels guilty because basically he's just been feeding Hera Meow Mix.
Her Meow Mix.
Yes, and thinks because she's just a normal cat. And Hera says, no, I like Meow Mix. Like Meow Mix are like potato chips for humans. And he says, really? And, but only eating potato chips? And then she says, I ordered a lot from Grubhub. That line made me laugh. That was a good line. But also, Hera actually knows journalistic lingo, writes the word lead spelled LEDE, which I never use in my writing because while journalists know what it means, the lay public has no clue necessarily what it means. I just found it funny that Scalzi assumes that the cat is smart enough to know what lead means. Yes.
For people who need to know, lead spelled LEDE is how you misspell lead as in the lead of a story so that it won't be printed.
Right.
It'll be caught by, hopefully, back in the day, caught by proofreaders or by the printing
typesetters,
the printing press, typesetters, typesetters themselves. So then there's other stuff so I'm old enough that when I do my writing workshop, I actually mark up people's pieces in PDF form.
Yeah.
I just use a pen. I use a stylus and pen to, it's easier and quicker for me. I don't know, Dan, what do you do?
This is where the pandemic changed things for me. I used to actually force people to hand in hard copies and I would mark them up with a pen. My handwriting is atrocious. So with the pandemic, people started handing things in using a software program called Canvas. I can mark those up as PDFs. Like I can put margin comments and then comments at the end and, they can read them, which is very useful. So I hate doing it because I have to read everything on the screen, which can be draining, but it's better.
Yeah, I basically am going as close as I can to hard copy without actually having a hard copy because I do refuse to type in all my comments because it's just faster for me to do handwritten.
See, for me, my handwriting is so atrocious now that actually typing in is probably quicker. That's another reason I'm okay with it.
But so one of the things that I do is I use copy marking stuff. I have to remember to every time explain to people, like when I say graph, GRAF, that is paragraph.
Yes. No, again, for my comments to my students, I never use graph GRAF because they don't know what it means. So I've just got to say paragraph.
3 underscores means capitalized. Strike through means, lowercase. Yeah. Caret, paragraph mark is the 2 lines backwards P. Anyway, I should probably stop using that.
I'm already getting anxious now thinking about the marks that you would do for the script version of the scripts that I send you because the double spaces would drive you bonk.
Well, I already go through and take out all the double spaces. So.
Yep.
All right, what else, Dan?
The only other thing I have is I did like the idea that I think Dobrev says this that each of the villains has their own cat, which as we later learn or knew at the time, they're all spies for Jake, except Dobrev's cat, which I actually did think was a nice little tell of, what wound up being the plot twist. But the key thing is that they say that the reason they have this is that the original version of the Lombardi Convocation was written up by Ian Fleming in one of the James Bond novels. And I like the idea of this sort of feedback effect between the real world, then pop culture, and then, of course, the real world adopts the pop culture meme. That I thought was a nice, clever touch.
I really liked that Persephone was a paid intern. Pay your interns.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I referenced the baffler. My favorite baffler kind of joke ever that they had it was just a cover line, and it was interns built the pyramids.
That's actually a good line. Yeah. It's a good line.
Yeah. And then like all the debris, there's a lot of debris field.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just all these little touches that really are best enjoyed by reading the book. So.
Yeah, I would say we've given away some of the good lines, but we have not discussed by far some of the really good touches. And the dialogue is Scalzi's strongest point, and the dialogue here is extremely witty. So, again, if you're going on vacation, read this book. It's a great book.
Or you just need a vacation of the mind.
Yes, even if it's a staycation, read the book.
Yeah, there you
go. Yeah.
So if you haven't already considered becoming a patron, please consider becoming a patron. Yeah. You get all the good stuff, which we listed at the beginning. So there's special episodes, and we have a lot coming up. There is True Detective, which will have just dropped by the time you hear this. There is the 250 patron-only episode selected by the patrons, which is
The Hunt for Red
October. Yeah. And then we had something else, which I've forgotten. And then we have our live show, which is not just for patrons, for anyone who's in town for South by Southwest, or if you live in Austin. March the 9th, it's Saturday evening at 7 p.m. at Cosmic Coffee, which is way south Congress. We'll be discussing Dune Part 2.
Yes, Part 2.
Part Duh. Dune Part Duh. That is what we're going to be discussing, which is a swerve out of our Ides or AIDs of March lane. Dan, what else you got?
I've got a Substack. It's called Dresner's World. Talk about, the state of the world, the state of the country. It's been a touch depressing as of late, but, I occasionally can talk about other things. Anna, what do you have?
I have a website where you can find out about more things that I'm doing, which is Anna Marie Cox. Or sorry,
it's Anna Marie Cox.
AnnaMarieCox.com, spelled the same, pronounced differently. I also, Dan, I started a blog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, there's this site called Buy Me a Coffee, and I decided to do that rather than a newsletter because I don't believe in newsletters. It's so buymeacoffee.com/AnnaMarieCox, and you can pay a one-time donation and get emailed the posts. So it's kind of like a newsletter, but I also like the idea that it just also exists out there as a blog. And specifically, I have written a few things about recovery.
Oh, good.
And it's kind of, I liked the idea of it kind of coffee and recovery, buy me a coffee. It's going to be about once a week. I've written a bunch of stuff in advance so that I know that I can follow through. So that's buymeacoffee.com/AnnaMarieCox. You can be a monthly supporter, and I'll be doing exclusive content, but mainly it's just kind of a way for me to kind of get some stuff not off my chest really, but more got some thoughts. I don't know, Dan. What are blogs?
Sketchpads. They are sketchpads. This has always been what I have thought. And so
it is a sketchpad for some stuff that has come up for me writing the memoir, but that doesn't necessarily fit neatly
into the memoir.
And I just kind of wanted a place to put it.
That's
so buymeacoffee.com/AnnaMarieCox or /AnnaMarieCox. Who knows? Yeah. Live show, patrons. You have a Substack. We're both on social media.
Yes, we're both on Blue Sky primarily. I am at Dan Dresner. She is at Anna Marie Cox.
And I am also on Instagram for all that stuff too. I will have another round of my writing workshop coming up in April.
Okay.
And with that, I think we're done. Until next time.
Keep this channel open for